Hello everyone, Sandra here. So in today's video, I want to talk about, personally I think it's a pretty interesting way at looking at how to play Yoimiya. And of course, before I want to get started, just a few things to say. The first one is that I'm still running a giveaway for Welcome Moon and Battle Pass 1 of each. If you're interested, please check that video out. I believe it's 2 or 3 videos before this one. The second thing is that for Yoimiya, I'll not be going over her skill this video because I already did that in a previous video. If you're interested, please check out that previous video. And the third thing I want to say, I am not paid by Mihoyo to say this, but Yoimiya is getting underlooked by a lot of people. I know stats isn't really supporting her on the side right now, but that is because most people are calculating her damage numbers as if she is playing as a typical pyro DPS, so very big damage equals big number equals good DPS. That's not how Yoimiya plays. She applies pyro faster than anyone, which means vape comp is not good for her because no one can keep up with her vaporize speed, even Xingqiu. And on top of that, Yoimiya is an archer, and archer's playstyle generally seems to be very different than all other type of DPS. The three major, other than Yoimiya, the two other major DPS archer we have seen so far, of course, other than physical DPS Fischl, is Ganyu and Child, both of whom uses very different playstyle from the rest of the DPS list. So I believe this gives enough reason that Yoimiya, if you just simply play her like Hu Tao, she's not going to achieve her damage ceiling at all. In fact, Yoimiya's most successful comparison right now is how you play Yanfei. That's at least one good way of playing Yoimiya, because Yanfei, as someone like Yoimiya, does also apply pyro rather fast, is a long-range pyro user. The only difference between Yanfei and Yoimiya is that Yanfei does not really have a time on how fast she applies pyro. On the other hand, Yoimiya is limited to 10 seconds, but doing more damage in return. So in this video, apart from all that aside, I'll be telling you how I think Yoimiya should be built. Of course, this will probably not be the meta build, because the meta build seems that you would want to swap her off after using her Q because of her two passives giving the rest of the team attack percent up while not giving her that. But I think the actual best way to build her is to actually keep her on the field to do damage even after her Q. Let me explain. Yoimiya is already in a sense where she needs another DPS to keep up, so why not make this comp more extreme, where you will bring 3 sub DPSs and 1 support. Let me explain how this works exactly. So in this case, you would have Yoimiya, another sub DPS to cover up for her downtime. Most of the case, Child is probably one of the better options, but other people like Beidou, there is a lot of sub DPS that can fill this role. However, the third position, you bring a sub DPS, but that sub DPS is off-field damage. So for example, someone like Xingqiu. Of course, Xingqiu is not the best example here because Xingqiu is not workable very well with Yoimiya because of the whole vaporize comps thing. Another good example in this case would be Fischl. So in this case, Fischl is actually still getting the buff from Yoimiya's Q, because after she casting her Q, she gets a buff, but at the same time Yoimiya is still on the field doing damage. So this turn, it makes the cycle much easier where Yoimiya is not forced to leave field after she casts Q. In this case, you just have to make sure another source of damage is going on the field while Yoimiya is after casting her Q. So basically, instead of casting E, Q, then leave field, then you basically look at someone who is basically casting Q first and then follow up with her E and output during her E, while her entire team, which most of whom will do off-field damage, is getting buffed from her Q. Yes. So with that said, I would be recommending some of the options for Yoimiya here as for the rest of her team build. Of course, this is to help any of you guys that want to pull for Yoimiya. If you do have most people, or you will have most of people on this list by Yoimiya's banner, then it is safe to build her. If you do not have this, then I would say actually skip her, because like someone who is like Ayaka in terms of Abyss and also Child, Yoimiya does require a more expensive version of team comp, although she does also have a few budget teams, but overall she does require at least 1 5-star in most cases in her team comp. So for those of you newer players, this might not be the best DPS to start as your initial DPS, of course, but I'll just go over them anyway, so you can decide for yourself if you have enough of the characters I've mentioned above to make a team for her. Now, of course, the first one you want for Yoimiya, not necessarily in position 2, but one of the ones you definitely want is Bennett. Now, Bennett doesn't have to go in every team because generally most of you probably have another team that want a Bennett, but overall what I'm trying to say here is Bennett is Pyro, Yoimiya is Pyro, Bennett can buff Yoimiya off field, and Bennett can also charge up her Q, so get damage here, and on top of that you get the Pyro resistance in. So if your Bennett is currently not used in another team for the Abyss, it might actually be a good idea to put Bennett in Yoimiya's team. Now, the second category of people you want to get is those off damage people I've been talking about previously. So, example being Xingqiu, but again, Xingqiu is not her best option. But if you do not have another off-field DPS, off-field sub DPS build, and Xingqiu is currently, not on any of your teams, then he can work, but again, not the best option here. So Xingqiu is a good example. Beidou, if you can get her Q going pretty fast, that would be good. The Electro Traveler, again, Electro Traveler would normally be in this case supporting Electro Traveler would be in this case supporting Yoimiya for most of the overload damage. If you're going with overload team, again you have to keep her Q up, but that's way more easier. And sometimes you can even bring Beidou and the Electro Traveler together to keep Beidou's Q up almost all the time. And other examples being, again, Fischl is a very good example. Sayu can even work in this case because her Q does do off-field damage, and on top of that, her Q, she works as a healer on top of that. And of course, someone, the Electro Archon or the Raiden Shogun might be useful for this role as well. Of course, I can't talk about her kit right now, but just saying she might be useful for this role. And of course, if you want utility support, Zhongli can work in this case as well, both doing off-field damage with his pillars, which is very inconsistent, but it's still damage. And on top of that, Zhongli's Q for crowd control and Zhongli's shield for general utility support and survivability is very helpful. And of course, the third class, which I kind of go over already, is healers. The only other pure healer I would recommend is Kokomi. So again, I can talk about her kit as well, but Kokomi will be helpful in Yoimiya's kit. Mostly not to play Vaporize, but just there to act as a healer, which is very helpful. And finally, the last group of people you want to bring is going to be the group of people that does CC. Zhongli does crowd control by petrifying everyone, but if you want to gather enemies together, because again, Vaporize is not Yoimiya's best comp, so most of the time you're forced to go the Overload comp, because Melt, she's not doing most of the damage. If you're doing Melt, then she's acting as an enabler if you're doing Melt, and Overload is the third one left. So for Overload, most of the time people will be blowing all the places because Overload does create explosion. So Venti, Kazuha, or even Sucrose, if you do not have any of them, might be helpful in this case to either buff Elemental Mastery or just gather enemies together so you can do more damage. So overall, I would say that again, Yoimiya is still a character who needs to take quite a while to figure out how exactly her kit pieces together. Of course, I cannot say with confidence that Yoimiya is going to overpower Hu Tao or anything like that. Currently, from my calculations, her damage will be close to Hu Tao if you play her the correct way. But again, everything is still up to her animation time, stuff like that, so I can't say anything for sure. But what I will say is that Yoimiya is not like the more advanced version of Amber that most people think she is. She is going to be okay, if not okay to strong level DPS, and most people are underlooking her because of the reason that she is a pyro, and most people think she should be played the way every single other pyro character is played as, which is not her strong suit again. So finally, I just want to say, if you do not have the Electro Traveler built and you are definitely getting Yoimiya, Electro Traveler would be a good thing to get, would be a good character to get started with. Otherwise, looking into Fischl, Beidou, Xingqiu if you don't really have anyone, but that's good. You need at least one CC character, so pick one between Sucrose, Venti, and Kazuha. And also you need another sub DPS to fill in the spot. And of course, that sub DPS can also be a DPS, but someone like Child, whose damage is focused in more getting the damage than getting out, would be more helpful in terms of overall damage boost. So that's my what I call mind-blowing idea of building Yoimiya. Basically, you let her stay on the field after casting her Q, and that's when you actually cast her E and use the off-field to deal with her damage. In this case, she still gets all the pyro buffs she gets from her E and all the things like that. Essentially, if you use the EQ then leave, then she is basically wasting quite a few stacks of pyro buffs, because after casting her E, she can gain up to 10 pyro damage buffs, which is only 20% pyro damage bonus, but still it's a buff, and those last 3 seconds each stack, so which means overall it would take 30 seconds for all those stacks to go away. So why not use them by casting Q first, then stacking up E, so she can still stay on the field after even E ends, as long as you want. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.